2015, at the height of the Syrian civil war, Angela Merkel triggered the greatest migration crisis Europe has ever seen, while also destroying the EU's legal structure for asylum claims, declaring "Wir schaffen das," "we can handle this."
Wir schaffen das. Wir schaffen das.
The German Chancellor opened Europe's welfare system to economic migrants, whom the mainstream media eagerly called refugees. 1 million migrants came to Europe in 2015. Human traffickers profited, violence erupted, and shocking scenes, like the tragic image of Alan Kurdi's lifeless body on a Turkish beach, flooded the global press. 8 years later, despite their efforts to deny this lethal incompetence, nothing has truly changed.
On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program.
From the US southern border to Europe's shores, millions try to reach the West. In the European Union, a left-wing and centrist majority seeks to fix the problem with a migration pact, a proposal to distribute the problem rather than to stop it. We went to the European Parliament to ask, why is Europe doing this to itself?
The migration pact doesn't solve anything.
The European Union suffers from many internal problems. We have a demographic decline, young people not wanting to get married, not wanting to raise families. So we have material prosperity but little hope. It's a major problem, and this leads to many other problems. I would also add that the social welfare state, the way the governments provide retirement benefits and so on, is becoming untenable. So this is a major problem in the European Union, and it's driving mass immigration. So these are all interconnected.
When Angela Merkel announced in 2015 that Germany would welcome all Syrian asylum seekers, she also destroyed the Dublin Regulation, a key part of the common European asylum system, which stipulated that migrants to the EU were to be processed in the first EU country where they arrived. The system had placed disproportionate strain on Italy, Greece, and Mediterranean countries to handle the full burden of arrivals, but now had to be replaced with something else. In September 2015, the EU decided to tackle the migration crisis by creating a pool of 160,000 quota migrants that were to be distributed to all EU member states.
The migration pact doesn't solve anything. It's basically just a tool to handle those migrants who already came in. So basically, it's a burden sharing, like all of the countries should take some migrants, or if they don't take, they have to pay.
20,000 euros per head. That is unacceptable.
The countries of the Visegrad Group, Poland, Hungary, Czechia and Slovakia, were the only ones to refuse, and in the end, only a tiny fraction of the 160,000 migrants were redistributed, as many EU states didn't live up to their promises.
The system is bound to fail because we already had mandatory quotas a few years back. There was even a case in front of the European Court of Justice about mandatory quotas. But what happened? Even the countries which did support the mandatory quotas didn't actually take in the required number of people. So the redistribution, the relocation of illegal migrants already failed once, and I would be surprised if it wouldn't fail again.
Despite this failure, the EU decided to revive its migrant quota plan, approving the Migration Pact on May 14, 2024, creating a new common asylum law with permanent and mandatory migrant quotas for EU states that will come into force in 2026. The main criticism of the pact is that rather than deal with the real underlying issues of uncontrolled immigration to Europe, it asks each country to pay 20,000 euros for every migrant they decide not to take in, even if that person hasn't reached their border yet. There is also no upper limit on how many quota migrants can be earmarked for a country, which in effect gives Brussels a tool it can use to ruin a country's economy if it refuses to take in their quota migrants.
Putting a patch on really open wound that won't stop the bleeding. Bulgaria is a border country, so for us, illegal migration flows from Turkey.
I'm coming from Romania, for example. We have external border with Serbia, with Moldova, and with Ukraine. We don't have that many problems, like let's say with Ukraine and Moldova as far as the illegal immigration is concerned. We had some issues, small issues with Serbia. But there are other countries that have bigger problems, like Italy, for example, Spain, Poland, has a problem with Belarus.
The failure of the Migration Pact is neatly illustrated by the situation in Poland, which shares borders with hostile Russia, Belarus, and war-torn Ukraine. If the EU were really interested in sharing the burden of migration, Poland would be owed a rebate. Why is that? After Russia invaded Ukraine, Poland opened its border to more than 5 million refugees, of which 2 million stayed in the first year. There was no conflict or tension. Yet despite its record-breaking success at integrating refugees, Poland is condemned by the EU for not taking enough migrants. But what are the real intentions lurking behind this migration pact?
It was meant to remove the wind of the sail of the anti-migration parties and the groups we now have in the European Parliament, because what we saw at the European elections across Europe is that parties which had a strong anti-immigration agenda, they gained a lot of votes, and they've become much stronger in the new cycle of the European Parliament.
Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary and Poland form the eastern bastion of the European Union. And yet, their calls to control borders are repeatedly ignored by proponents of the pact. When Viktor Orban announced in 2015 that Hungary was building a border fence to stop the migrants, there was outrage and indignation in Brussels. However, at the 2024 European elections, we saw clear signs that European voters are waking up to this issue.
They're not even calling it an illegal immigration or migration. They find different words to describe something that is very clear to every rational person. How can you claim that you respect, that you fight, that you promote the rule of law? You are not enforcing the law. People are coming here illegally. Not only they are coming here illegally, but they pay bribes. They don't know who these people are. And we allow the smugglers to decide who's coming in the European Union.
Can the political will ever exist to close the borders when so much of Europe's political class are still in denial of the problem?
Frau Ursula von der Leyen said something astonishing. We have to make the both sides of the Mediterranean Sea, meaning the south of Europe and the north of Africa, to be the same, to be alike.
And propose a new agenda for the Mediterranean together with Kaja Kallas, because the future of those two Mediterranean shores is one and the same.
North of Africa will become developed as the south of Europe, Spain, Italy, Greece, or this will be the opposite. We will import not only the problems and the culture and the religion and the poverty and also the temptation to terrorism of those people.
Many of the terrorists who carried out the attack against the music venue at the Bataclan in Paris in 2015 had entered Europe, posing as refugees during the migrant crisis. The next year, Anas Amri, a Tunisian asylum seeker, drove a truck into a Christmas market in Berlin, killing 12 people. Rahmat Akilov, an Uzbek asylum seeker, killed 5 in another truck attack in Stockholm in 2017. The list of attacks carried out in Europe by asylum seekers is long. Of course, the majority of these migrants are not bloodthirsty jihadis, but the correlation between mass migration and the increase in crime is undeniable. Large parts of Brussels, Malmö and Paris are off limits to people with an instinct for self-preservation. Sadly, more and more such no-go zones are emerging in cities across Western Europe. The first part of solving this problem will have to be an admission from the European Commission that the commodification of migrants comes from their own cynical attempts to deny that some migrants are more desirable than others.
We are not anti-immigration. On the contrary, we know we are a country which has an old population, and we need migration. The only problem is that until 4 or 5 years ago, we had a very good migration. We had migration from Ukraine, from Moldova, from Romania, from the let's say the eastern states, from Brazil, from South America, and they integrated very well in Portugal, and they are really good members of our society. But now the problem is that we open completely the doors to anybody, and that is causing a big problem nowadays in Portugal, in many places. Insecurity, crime rates raised, and obviously our social security, which is not already in very good health, is also suffering, and people in fact are suffering. Many people in areas of dense immigration are afraid to get out of homes, and this is very bad.
Europe now faces a fundamental choice between controlling its borders or playing a game of pass the parcel with unsuitable immigrants. But for Brussels, the animosity created by uncontrolled migration only advances their agenda of a federalized EU without nation states.
Von der Leyen goes to make the pact with the socialists and with the liberals
and with the Greens and with everybody who wants to continue to destroy Europe, to destroy the nations of Europe through this uncontrolled and illegal immigration, which they hope are going to be voters for the left.
We are facing disintegration of real European people, of European culture, of European nations. So there is only one Europe, that's Europe of the nations, and I support it.
The European Commission has a right to tell to the member states in the EU that now your coach number will be 500 or 5,000 or 15,000 migrants, and now you have to take them. And you can buy yourself out from this code system, paying approximately 20,000 euros per migrant. So, and this money will paid to the other country who are ready to take those migrants.
I don't believe in coerced solidarity. Solidarity has to be something that we do freely, of our own free will, and not something coerced and forced upon member states from above. Borders exist for a reason, and I've stated many times that it's the sovereign right of every nation state in Europe to decide who enters and under which conditions.
Meanwhile, here in Poland, on the frontier of the European Union, there remains a solid example that an ordered approach to border controls, so harshly criticized by some centrists and the socialist left, can benefit those who are most deserving of European help.
Up to date, we've got more than 200,000 Ukrainian kids that were passed through Polish school system. And then we were able to gather more than 40% of those who decided to live and stay in Poland, mostly women, to open for them the labor market. More than 40% out of them is now officially employed on the market.
Europe is not the only place where left-wing efforts to crush national identities is causing a resurgence of conservatism. All over the world, people are voting for leaders who will maintain order, keep their society stable, and keep criminals out. Newly elected leaders of countries like Italy, the Netherlands, and the US are now showing that a shift in foreign and domestic policy is inevitable. The Migrant Pact will soon be in the dustbin of history, and most importantly of all, the careers will soon be over for the types of politicians who supported it.